We want to spend a couple of minutes talking about racing in the Lone Star State at Lone Star Park. They just began their 2018 meeting yesterday, and we are pleased to be joined by the voice of racing at Lone Star Park. That's Jim Byers. Jim, very good day to you, sir.
Well, thanks. Nice to be here. It's good to have the season back going again, and we're back with TVG again this year. And with that help, we saw some big increases in handle last year over the previous campaign. So hopefully that'll happen again this year.
Well, a couple of the usual suspects drawing first blood on the opening day program. I was checking the charts, and we saw that jockey Richard Iramia, last year's champion by a one-win margin over Iram Diego, got a couple last night, both for trainer Carl Broberg, who's got some work to do to close the gap on Steve Asmussen.
Yeah, last night there were a couple of races that featured Broberg versus Asmussen showdowns. Broberg happened to get the better of them last night, but those two always engage in very interesting battles for the top of the trainer standings by wins, not just here, but at Remington Park and some other tracks as well. And you know, coming up, we've got some major important stakes races for this region coming up, including, of course, the Steve Sexton Mile on May 6th. Grade 3 event, $200,000. And then its sort of companion race, the Lone Star Park Handicap, another Grade 3 on May 27th. As far as the Sexton Mile goes, you know, horses like Gervin are pointing to that one, and certainly would be a tremendous pleasure to see Gervin on this racetrack. And Dalmore has been talked about as a possible for that race as well, plus some Baffert horses. So some interesting stakes, some for Texas breds coming up on the meet.
We're going to look ahead to this coming Sunday and focus on race number 9 on the program there. It's a non-conditioned allowance event at a mile. Now, Carl Broberg not present. Steve Asmussen is represented by Super Day, who draws the rail in there. But it looked to me, Jim, as though Brett Calhoun might hold the strongest hand in here.
Yeah, this is an interesting race, and the entries are about to be finalized, and that's why we don't have the morning line yet for this one. I'm going to be curious to see who Rick Lee tabs as our morning line favorite in this race. It's strictly for 3-year-olds. Many of them are stretching out, and the Calhoun runners you mentioned, Swift Shock puts blinkers on, and he is really a sprinter. He's an off-the-pace sprinter, and we've all seen off-the-pace sprinters that did not take to two-turn racing. It'll be Swift Shock's second try around 2 turns. He did have a 7/8 race at Delta Downs in his background as well, and he didn't fare very well in that one. And then the other Calhoun's the one I'm really interested to see, Galactica. This horse was a really, really promising Texas bred here last summer, and then had some time off, came back at Sam Houston Race Park in the Jim Zorbit back last month. And if Galactica can stretch out effectively, and it'll be his first try around 2 turns, he'll be tough to beat. But the horse I'm kind of looking for is horse that the Buyer Figs have not been in love with, and that's Poderoso Equus on the outside. This horse had brutal trouble in his debut at Sam Houston. I happened to see that race and call that race, but his 2 races since were on sloppy tracks. Possibility we could have a track with a little bit of moisture in it on Sunday, so that might help him. And I just think he's one of the more accomplished ones around 2 turns, and we'll see how some of these sprinters stretch out. But I would look for him. I think there's a chance you can get a decent price on that outside horse.
It's a good race, and I think that's one of the things that the handicappers will have to consider is that some of the more talented runners don't have that 2-turn experience, whereas we got a couple of horses drawn towards the inside, Redatory and Major Brown, both of whom were actually started in the Springboard Mile last year. That's an important race in that part of the world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Major Brown fared better than Redatory did in that particular race. And Major Brown's a horse we've seen here quite a bit. We've seen him on the turf course at this racetrack. He's a big brown horse, and he does actually he's a big brown colt, I should say. And, you know, he does have experience going 2 turns. He generally shows quite a bit of speed, but it remains to be seen with all these sprinters in this race on Sunday, whether he'll be right on the lead or more likely in sort of a stalking position. But definitely Major Brown is one that I think could get a good trip in this one.
And, you know, I'm just now noticing that Major Brown is getting back to the main track. The last time he was on dirt, which was at Delta, he was a well-beaten second, but the horse that beat him that day, Zanesville, I'm pretty sure that's a Tom Amos horse that came back and ran in one of the major Derby preps. So that second place finish for Major Brown may be better than it looks at first glance.
He's always been a talented colt. I've always thought, dating back to his two-year-old campaign here, that he had a chance to be a nice colt in this part of the country. And he's tried different distances. He's tried sprinting. He's been on the turf. Now he gets back to a mile on the main track, and who knows, that very well might be his best situation.
We've been chatting with Jim Byers, the voice of racing at Lone Star Park. Jim, we want to remind our viewers that for this entire opening weekend at Lone Star, they can take advantage of that money back special. They get their money back if their selection runs second or third. And I understand that you'll be helping out with some selections for our viewers to consider.
Yeah, we offer our win selections from here in the booth, and then occasionally some other tickets, but always a late pick 4 as well. The late pick 4 paid huge last night. There was an overwhelming favorite in that last race, Sherrills Ready, who ran third, and so that upset things quite a bit in the late pick 4. But we'll have those, the late pick 4, other selections for you as you follow our coverage.
All right, Jim, thanks very much for your input. We look forward to speaking with you as that meeting goes forward there at Lone Star Park.